Hi everyone, my name is Andrea Izoni. I'm the Chief AI Officer of AI Technologies. I'm here to talk about AI governance. As you know, it's one of the hot topics of the day due to different regulation and how you can build this governance if you're using AI models, either in-house or from third parties, and give you some hint how to do a successful and cost-effective, by the way, implementation. Basically, an implementation that doesn't cost too much to run, and you can optimize your own resources, either internal or external, depending on your situation. That said, let's start with the structure of the talk. So briefly, I'll give you an overview of what the different regulations are, and the one that any case you should consider in case you want to have an AI governance. Basically, you should link your AI governance to certain regulation. I will show a few of them. And the impact, I go very briefly on the impact of cyber and technical team. Why do I think actually having an AI governance in making an effect today? And then I go into the practical side of it. Yeah. All the rest of the, this brief talk will be to give you ideas how actually an AI governance will look like with the implementation step I will suggest to you. Okay. Then I go briefly on certification as well. If you want to implement AI governance, it's best to follow a structure. You don't need to necessarily certify at the end. What I mean by that is to pay, the external audit, etc., to have, the stamp that you are certified. But it's a good practice to at least follow the structure this certification give it to you. For few quid, for few pounds, hundreds of pounds, not more, you can download these policies and follow the structure, already ready-made structure that will help you to implement. Okay, and then I give you finally a rule of thumbs or what to remember for the day. If there's something else to remember for this brief talk, there will be at the end my rule of thumb. Okay, full disclosure, by the way, I am involved in AI governance policy and structure. I'm ISO and IEEE committee member, especially for ISO 42001. Yeah, the new AI governance certification called 42001. I'm involved with that. So but that in mind, although I would say that this talk, yes, it's related to certification in general, but as you will see, I'm not talking specifically of that at all. But it's good to mention for transparency that I am a committee member for ISO IEEE, which are two governance and certifications bodies. Move on with that. Let's start. So, why AI governance is important? Very, very briefly on that. You're not here for a theoretical talk anyway, but I'm sure you heard about the EU AI Act, which is being published in July 2024. And basically that regulates the EU and somehow somewhere the UK, as in there are many relationships between these two countries. And yes, although the UK doesn't have a specific body of law like the EU AI Act, basically leave to the different authorities, the health and safety authorities, the financial authority, and all the rest to legislate or give specific guidance if the company within the sectors should regulate or not. They create a little bit of ambiguity. Basically, the EU AI Act is what is called a horizontal approach, one body of law for all the industries, while the UK and the US and Israel and few others are what is called a vertical approach, which means the central government does not regulate but push it to the singular authority which in each industry to decide if there is a need for a specific regulation within that. Okay. Now, US, obviously, I'm talking about the federal level. There are different regulations in Texas, Colorado, or California, for example. They're a little bit more regulation prone than other states within the US. Yeah. But the situation got complicated. But the important thing to notice here, if you're using AI solution, especially if it's what is called in a situation recording the UAI Act, the impact life, okay, the principle has to impact human life or life in general, roughly is the same principle for any of these regulation, bear that in mind. Then you need to do something around the governance, yeah? And that's bring us back to the next type. So regardless if it's a vertical approach, horizontal approach like UAI Act, somehow you need to link to that because you need to show a good intention, good approach if you have an AI application, okay? There is no free lunch on using AI, basically. Now, I give a very overview of the UAI Act because at the moment it's the most comprehensive and body of law present. But basically, there is an acceptable risk, anything related to social calling in public places or that can exploit emotion recognition, again, in public setting, things like that, unacceptable since February 20 this year, 2025, a few months ago. And the important bit actually is what is in the high systematic risk and limited risk. Here is everything that really impact the human life, yeah? Of course, if you have an AI system that, making a diagnosis or even worse, a prognosis, it got wrong, then you're clearly impacting human life, right? A scoring exam, the exam actually was wrongly scored, it will impact possibly your future career, things like that. They are impacting the human life, yeah? Therefore, all these systems are considered high risk. Hence, I will talk in that in a moment. You have until August 2026. You have until August 2026 to satisfy certain AI governance, compliance regulation. And we talk that in a moment. And then obviously there is the limited risk, which is basically general purpose. Again, the deadline of this is August 2025, in 2026. I'm sorry. It just means that if you have like a chatbot or something like that, that yes, interacting with the human, there is a potential harm, like insulting the human on the chatbot or things like that, but it's not life impacting, yeah, it's not life threatening. Therefore, it's limited risk. Yes, you need to do a light touch of regulation, but not too much. I'm gonna explain to it in a moment. Again, prohibited is already out since February 2025. The rest is either August 2026 or August 2027. I'm going to talk that in a moment. The rest is unaffected. Again, let's talk about a little bit more the relationship between, look, AI Technology is a UK company. Yes, we work worldwide, but there is a relationship. The UK, Brexit, with the EU, Brexit or not. So just briefly on that, for the people that probably follow me or watch this seminar from the UK. Again, as I said before, UK is a vertical approach, means the authority, same the US, by the way, there are the authorities, they need to, if they feel the needs, push for specific regulation within their industry, yeah? Basically, that follow 5 principles of safety, security, robustness, appropriateness, transparency, and explainability. But at the moment, the consensus so far has been there is light touch, yeah? But again, that does not mean you don't need to know anything, because in fact, if anything, that is worth having an ambiguity, as in you need to behave well, but not defining what behave well means, a gray area of ambiguity that regardless you should show that you're behaving well, although you're not strictly regulated like the UAI Act. That said, let's do that in practice. What it means, as you remember, what is important is, again, the deadline is August 2026 or 2027 for Annex 2 regulation. If you want, I will talk about that later. What you need to do for this limited regulation, again, a chatbot for customer service, or things like that. You have time again, and I repeat again, August 2026. This is the most important deadline you should remember about AI governance. And you should have, if your chatbot is using OpenAI, which version of OpenAI? Yeah, is using a 4, 4.5, a 3.5, which one? Okay. Give a summary. If you have a specific data, just give him a summary. How many data points you got? where it's coming from, is internal, is external third party, are there sensitive data involved, and you need to respect GDPR policy. Another thing that is not mentioned here, but is mandatory, it's good to remember, if you are implementing or using a chatbot or rebranded from third party, whatever that is, you need to label that the final user is interacting with a non-human bot. Yeah, you need to label as you're not. This is a non-human bot. Please remember that. So you need to explicitly label this is a non-human when using it. I'm not written here, but please remember that. Now, the important bit, as you can see, this is quite light touch, I would say. Look, if it takes you one day to do this, I would and exaggerating, maybe a few days depending on the application, but as you can see, this is quite light touch. Yeah, I hope you agree with that, or disagree with that. Let me know in any case. But the important bit is when you touch high risk tier. Yeah, you are high risk application, again exam, app scoring, pharma, or whatever that is. Although pharma or toys is something probably go to a next two, which means is yes, if the person is in an AI toy, it can be but it can be unless it's is related to the plastic or things like that, which obviously not AI related. You have time until August 2027, so an additional years, 36 months from the initial publication to comply with that. And what do you need to comply? First of all the limited risk I already touched, and then you have to have evaluation records, which means you basically need to test your own system, to define some tests, and based on some metric or safety metrics. I'm going to touch on that. You need to show periodically that your system consistently passes this evaluation test, and you record Dave's passing this test. Yeah. You need to have mitigation risk. Basically, if your AI system, for whatever reason, or cybersecurity reason, I'm going to touch that in a moment, is not passing the test or hallucinate or whatever, you have an accession incident response, for mitigating the risk, what happened next. On top of that, you should have layer of cybersecurity measure, against possible cyber attack that can, corrupt your data, hence the AI model, or directly the AI model itself, steal data from the customer, whatever that is. You should have, using AI in a high risk tier, a cybersecurity layer to minimize the risk of someone that taking control of your AI bot. Okay, saying that, let's go a little bit more in detail what it means to put in focus what the AI Act compared to other regulation. Very briefly on that, and then finally we can start with the application, how to actually implement that, unless there are questions. No? All right. So, as I say, this is purely EU, but there are other body of law, mostly in state within US or in China, that roughly speaking have the same kind of format. Basically, all they want to do, remember this, they want to save the citizen, the human life of the system, and avoid harm. For example, in California, they have just a guideline for a large AI system, basically fundamental, AI model, large language model provider, which are not many, as you can imagine, OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, which also use an OpenAI, Anthropic, and few other labs in the world. That if the training cost is more than 100 million, that's their definition, then they need to, have some, security around their own AI systems, or pay if something happened to them, they are exposed to a significant, damage fee like 500 US million. Okay, now China, not gonna touch too much about that, but the interesting piece, first of all, is interesting to understand that the AI model definition is the same for all of them. So in some way there is a worldwide standardization given by I'll say at the moment OECD. Yes, this organization here, they have a definition what AI system is. You can look it up at that. It's not the time now, but you can say. But all of this, UAI Act, all the certification I'm gonna touch in a moment, they all use the same definition based by the this non-profit organization, okay, OECD, okay. Why I'm saying that? I'm saying that because that means there is kind of a standardization on then how you can define your AI model and the AI governance on top, okay. So in China, there is also another, how would I say, twist on what is important to in regarding to AI governance, which is traceability. Basically, as you can see on, if you, for example, Google something, you will see that the first option now is their AI model response, and whatever the response is are as reference. Yeah, that would have been considered traceability. Basically, if you're using an LLM, a citing something, it should say to you where that citation coming from, which reference, and etc. Yeah. Pros and cons on that. I do not have time to discuss that, but as you can see, Google, which obviously is a worldwide organization, does have traceability in its own system. It gives you the references, even if this traceability requirement is mostly strictly on China, but is rolling over all worldwide. Long story short, you need to behave well, and AI governance is necessary, but of course you need to do in a cost-effective way, right? You don't want you don't want to implement already costly system, then put AI governance on top, and then what's the return of investment for you? Better not doing at all. And that's what you absolutely you need to avoid, and this can be done, by the way, on the state you implemented the AI solution as well. Okay, now very briefly on that, you may argue, okay, this is the AI solution just a cost, yeah. It is in many different ways. If and the AI governance on solution on top of the AI solution, the AI governance on top of the AI solution you already built is just a cost. Yes, I need to be compliant, but at the end of the day, what's the return for me? Well, it's true. We could argue that it may save you if you have a situation like, God forbid, you have a lawsuit or there is a breach in your system, or you have a serious problem which your AI involved. You at least can show you build the effort against to prevent that. Yeah. So in a lawsuit, you can show that you make the effort to avoid that, to minimize the risk, and that's an obvious statement to say. But there are others. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show in this graph. So this graph again is taken by OECD, the organization we were talking before, that has actually defined put definition of the AI system AI model is, and all the other organization and bodies of law, including the UAI Act, use the same definitions. Yeah. Now, they did what is called AI Incident Monitor Index. You can look it up online, in which they report any cyber or not cyber incident related to the usage of AI. Yeah, and this is a graph. So as you can see, there is a huge spike around November or October, November 2022. Yeah. And then there is kind of a decrease around August, July 2024. Now, you may say this is a coincidence. Okay, it could be. Correlation is not causation. I agree with you. But October, November 2022 is actually when ChatGPT was released. Yeah. August 2024 is when actually is the UAI Act came into effect. So you may argue that just the very fact that a body of law is coming to effect, some free lunch in the market, especially for malicious actor, he refrain them to use it for malicious purposes, AI system. Yeah. So there is already a good effect on that. On top of that, if you organizations are taking these things seriously, which they should, but I stress it, in a cost-effective way, we could see this graph reducing further and further, which is a good thing for all of us, which basically the purpose of any body of legislation, to be honest. That said, look, now from now on, I'll only do practical information for you, and I hope that will be helpful for you anyway. So first of all, if you don't have anything at the moment about AI governance, one of the simpler you already have, governance, about data governance, GDPR and the like, then you should already have implemented a system in which you have people in the organization with different titles. One is a data protection officer, DPO, data custodian, data owner, data steward, data champion. You should be familiar with this term, and you have a framework around that. The easiest thing you can do, both to understand the concept of AI governance and actually start to implement it, is translate this terminology into AI. So basically, ditch the D, data, and put AI. So data protection officer become AI protection officer, data custodian, AI custodian, and so forth. In this way, at least you have an idea what AI governance should do. Yeah, there are nuances, of course, there are differences, of course, but it's at least a good start. Yeah, if you do that, you have something to start with. Okay. And obviously, I'll touch about that, how exactly you can word the people around it and what they should do and things like that. But at least you have something now. Now, how would you do that if you don't have any structure? What structure you should follow? Again, you don't need necessarily to be certified on any of this certification. Again, full disclosure, I'm a committee member for ISO 42001, but at least you can spend few quids. I'm talking about in USD probably $200 or something like that, and buy the draft or the policies and follow the same structure. Yeah, if you follow that, at least you're starting from something, and you can structure your own system for AI governance, which I'm going to explain to you in a moment. Again, if you don't need to have at least a certification, but you can adhere to the certification. Is already an effort because you're already doing the effort to build it. You're just not being examined or audited externally, which is the main cost. Just to give an idea for the external audit cost, we are talking about, this is true for, I would say, for ISO 27001, which is the security one, which I believe together with the ISO 9001, which is the quality one, yeah, is the most used in the market. There are among all the certification, there are many companies they already certified 27001 per security or 9001 for quality, and the cost, especially for 27001, which roughly is transferable for AI, gonna talk about that, is between 10 or 50k plus an yearly fee of 5 to 10k. Again, you don't need to have the external audit. This will be the cost of the external, the certification itself, but you can at least adhere to the structure, and if you create the internal effort, you can do and show any way the effort. Not to mention that if you do any of these after, there is a presumption, what is called presumption of conformity, which means basically if you are a EU company, yeah, and you're using AI system, these AI system are in the highest tier, you need to AI governance, perfect. How do you show they are abiding and compliant to the EU AI Act? Well, one of the solution is taking one of these certification, and since you are certified in whatever the certification you choose, like 42001, then there is a so-called presumption of conformity. Basically, since you're putting the effort to be certified in a specific AI governance certification, then we can presume you are EU AI compliant, EU AI Act compliant. Yeah, this is the presumption. Basically, you put in the effort. Yeah. That said, this is how ideally an AI system with on top an AI governance should look like. Okay. So there are three main components slash four, and I'm gonna touch each one of them exactly what it means. Yeah, this is a little bit theoretical, I know, but I will be practically in literally 2 minutes. I mean it. Bear with me. So first, you have a safety review board of AI governance. Okay, what does it mean is you have a board that basically structure high level policy, ensure there is cost, they have a budget, and they ensure that the budget is used, minimized for return on the investment of the company, setting the AI behavior and the absolute risk they need to check. Coming from a testing background, yeah, and being certified in testing, software testing myself, I know that testing for everything is a fallacy. This is the first rule in testing, any testing, if it's AI, cyber, whatever. Testing everything is a fallacy. There is always more things to test than you can do, is a fallacy. And the best thing you can do, and this is definitely the Rural Safety Review Board, is to decide what is the maximum risk exposure of the company in detail. But the maximum risk, that is where most of the tests and the policy and procedures should be focused on. You cannot test everything, should focus on the maximum, the highest risk of the company using AI. Yeah. Then you have machine learning operation and safety team. Basically, once that the policy is defined, once what the risk has been identified in the AI system, these design the actual test and they implement the actual test. You do design what's the procedure, how many time per years you want to check it periodically, what exactly the accuracy threshold you want, 95%, or if you are using AI for anomaly detection, you have different methods like false positive ratio, what's the ratio should be in the test, how you design the test, how you implement, run, and record the result of the test, things like that. Very nitty gritty in practice how to do the test. I'm gonna show that in a moment. And then you have possibly, but it's obviously where the cost rise significantly, you're auditing someone external, and so why there is a additional cost of the company. They review what you have done, and they give you what usually is called an external gap analysis, or even the certification itself, and give you their own review how the quality of your system is, yeah, and it's conformant with either a certification, a body of law, whatever that is, yeah. Of course, if you just the first two and you have an internal audit, basically someone internal to your organization but they didn't build it, at least there's something, and you have the cost will be, I would say, as minimal as possible. The highest cost is when you want to have an external audit. That's where costs start to ramp up. I'm showing that in a moment what there are different tests, things you can do. Hopefully that is clear. Let me check if you have any question on that. I give you a few seconds on that. See if you comment. No? All right. And then I'm going even more in practice. How would you structure this in practice? Yeah, as I said before, the safety review board feel like is the parliament. Yeah, the parliament needs to build laws and regulation. Yeah, and what you do is literally building evaluation grid. Again, you build evaluation grids. What I mean by that, you have a AI classification stuff. Whatever AI your company is gonna to implement, this company needs to be assessed in your own evaluation grid. Yeah. I would suggest you should choose /3. I give you here a practical example. What first is AI classification standard. Okay, we are using this AI chatbot for customer service. Fantastic. Okay, how do we grade that in classification? Is it fully automatic decision making, as in no human involved? Is using decision making, but there is capability, but it's just used, as in there is a human involved, or B1, or D, AI has no input in safety function, which means basically whatever the AI is, the input for the client or the internal team is minimal or negligible. That said, then you need to decide what you in your AI system as the many thing you could test. What exactly you want to test? I'm gonna send you exactly what I mean by that. And you have different categories categories of that. You want interpretability. So, okay, this is a chatbot. I want to be absolutely sure when the answer is thrown out, I want to be interpretable. I want to check how interpreted each answer is throwing out is. You want robustness, which means that no matter how little bit different the answer, the question or the chatbot you put, the answer is always roughly the same. If I ask the same question but just different wording, roughly speaking, I always have the same question. No, it's not starting to hallucinate. Basically, it's robust to the same question with different words. It's robust. Verifiability means, okay, I want my system to be always produce a result that can check more or less like traceability I was talking to you before, right? Reading in China, basically can always check is the output of the system is I can check manually with other sources or things like that, how verifiable it is all the time. Yeah. Which one it is? You can do all of them. It's good, but obviously will rise the cost. But you need to, the key here is to decide what to do. Yeah. And this is the absolutely crucial element. You cannot test everything unless you have unlimited budget, but right, nobody has unlimited budget, and you need a return on investment for your system. So you need to decide what is important for you and go for that. Yeah. And then you have a compliance classification. So not necessarily, especially if you look in the certification, there is a thing called the scope. Yeah. So basically, if you, for example, if you're looking for being ISO 27000 certified, at the beginning of your certification journey, you need to decide what is called the scope, which means what system of my company I want to be compliant and certified. Yeah. For example, you may have using a lot of AI system, yeah, like a chatbot for customer facing or some AI chatbot just internal for the company. Yeah, you can easily decide that is compliant to the AI Act that the chatbot for customer service, as in the one that talk directly to the client, yes, this absolutely needs to be compliant to the AI Act. But the one that we are testing internally for our drafting, that doesn't need to be compliant. So I can class the external chatbot needs to be class 1, fully compliant for the safety standards. And then the internal chatbot that we're using just for draft is not compliant. We don't need to check in most of the things, apart from data probably, or things like that. So you see, you can decide which one to do or not. So here is as you can see, we define different evaluation grades. Yeah, I'll give you an example of that. But on different evaluation grade, now is the time for the practical team to come in. Yeah, which basically is what we call machine learning operation, AI safety team. They come along and okay, they read the grid. Okay, A1 is that, B1 is that, and then class 1, class X. They say they want it temporarily, okay, and then they design the test. Yeah, so the test can be designed for, I want, as I said before, I want to set the accuracy is be above or a certain threshold. I want a certain false positive or ratio below a certain threshold, whatever the other metric you're gonna use. Yeah, I want to design that, and I want the cybersecurity and the corruption test for the data and hashing the entire model, and the hashing needs to be with whatever cryptography technique you want to use it. And then I design the formal register. Basically means whenever a tester run the test, what should record? Okay, the time of the test, I execute the test at whatever, the result were these. And if the result were bad, then you need to trigger an incident response, and you need to define an incident response, which obviously is compliant with the grid we said before. Yeah, if obviously, for example, AI safety compliance. Incident response is non-compliant, it's zero, so you cannot do much, low priority. If it's class 1, you need to define incident response for a class 1 AI safety compliant classification, if that is the case, yeah? And then late but not least is that are actually the guys, the actual testers that do the nitty-gritty operation and run the test, they record the result, they do the maintenance of the scripts or things like that. If you want, or you have to because your company is exposed to a lot of regulation, you may need an external audit. Yeah, is exemplified with this icon, red icon on the right. Again, you don't necessarily need an external audit. Usually the largest amount of cost when you do the external audit, but you can do a lot even if you implement that. And in practice, what this means. Okay, so let's imagine you have two systems, yeah? I give you complete example. So again, as you see in the first slide, the slide before, I defined a review board, yeah? I give a classification grid. The board, the safety review board, define and approve free, in this case, free safety reward grid, yeah? Evaluation grid, classification standard, yeah? Now, your companies just acquire or develop internally with third party, a mixture, doesn't matter, a system, yeah? One system, for example, could be, this is a pure example, right? You have internal legal document for all your client, and you build an AI bot that automatically draft legal agreement for your customer based on buyer data or sensitive data of the amount of supply in defense or whatever that is, yeah? You build a solution like that. Another example, just to give another example, is a system that you have a lot of drone image or satellite image, or your museum. If you're a museum, you have a lot of records or National Archive records or things like that. All the data is not tagged or categorized. You want an automatic system to tag that or categorize automatically because it would be too costly to do it manually, yeah? And you have build a system that automatically categorize your system, yeah, automatically without manual intervention, yeah. These are two perfectly valuable solutions. Now, here's the moment to build AI governance on top of this solution. These solutions are built, are ready to go live. You need to build an AI governance. How would you do that? Well, first of all, you need to classify, as I said before, yeah? So, for example, you can choose this classify the system eyes during development with decision making, yeah? Which means this solution should be used but a final review or a human should be involved. That could be, yeah. So basically, you're not fully automatically rely on the output, but you need a system for checking the quality of the output, human quality of the output before putting in other system, yeah. Okay. And then you can decide that this system actually is class 2 in terms of compliance and pagination. Cannot directly fully deployed, as in the total output, it shouldn't be automatically sent to another automatic system. Basically, this system cannot talk directly to an automatic system, but in between should be a human review, yeah? And there is, which basically is written here, cannot be fully deployed and necessary risk reduction for additional verification validation measure. This will be classified as class 2. You decide this is for these two systems, you want to apply these two classification, and then you apply this table here should represent what was in between AI safety property classification, which property you want to test. Yeah, again, you cannot test everything. What is more important for me? And you decide that, for example, you can want to test specificability or input. By the way, things get more complicated, as you can see, because there is input, output, and if there is human knowledge to twist or to set the parameters, the sensitivity of the parameter of the AI system, or things like that. Yeah, I know it's getting big technical, but hopefully it's useful for you. Yeah, and you need to decide what I want to test. Well, in specificity, I want to test the input and the output, but not the human knowledge, basically the tuning or the setting the parameter of the model itself, yeah? Generalization, I want to just to check if generalize for human knowledge. Basically, if I tune a little bit the model with parameters, that's still generalize. So you just start to generalize less or most. Can I have a test on that? Robustness only on the output, not on the input. Yeah. I want to be sure the through perturbation the output doesn't go and hallucinate. And verifiability, I want traceability basically was obtained before. Yeah, that's as an example. You choose that, by the way. This is a pure example to show that. Once you have shown that, then is the moment your AI safety team can design the test. Yeah, the accuracy, for positivity ratio, the register, etc. And then there is someone that run and maintain the test, the operation team. Hopefully, is clear so far when I'm talking about. And then I proceed with give you an example of, okay, some organization like you will have no governance yet. Yeah, so they will start from scratch. I give you two ways to start from scratch the governance, or in the other case, start from already existing governance. You may already have 27001 or others. Yeah. Now I start, literally nothing. No AI governance. Yeah, you have implemented one of these solution or other solution, again from third party, internal, whatever that is. You have this AI solution. Before you go live, you need to have AI governance. What would you do? Okay, from scratch. Well, in that case, again, I cannot stress enough. You should have a priority of what's exact risk exposure. For example, I come back to this example here. These risk exposure could be what's the maximum risk exposure you could have in this application. Yeah, for example, you will have a legal document with sensitive data, and the data were wrong. So whenever the contract gets executed, you can have the supplier and the buyer sending different amounts of goods that actually should have been. Yeah, I'll give you a quick example just to understand. This is bad. Would you agree it's bad? Yeah. If the AI system decided that is absolutely bad, there is a risk it not be sustained. So we absolutely need to check the right amount has been automatically put in the basis of the customer agreement. Otherwise, we mess up with the payment of goods or things like that. In the other case, for example, is stacking satellite images, we should absolutely check the confidentiality and privacy of certain satellite image of people are absolutely checked for privacy. Yeah, and that's absolutely a risk, because the moment we don't do that, we use image that actually shouldn't be published, etc., we can be liable. For example, if you decide that this is the maximum risk, when I say maximum risk, I obviously mean there is a liability attached to that, right? If you're breaching the law of privacy of people or things like that, well, you're liable. And therefore, is a huge risk for you as an incentive to do it right. And if you're building a legal document, this legal document has the wrong amount, and so you end up your client end up with a wrong document, you're liable for that. Yeah. Therefore, that's what you need to check. So again, I cannot stress this enough. You need to absolutely define what's the maximum risk exposure for your business using the AI application. Once this is done, well, you have different example you can find freely or almost freely online, as I say, a few £100 or dollars if you go on the ISO.org website, and you can find a lot of examples how to structure it. Yes, you can use also LLM to, once you find that, you can also use LLM to structure your AI governance based on that. There are a few examples on that, and you can definitely do it. And also remember, if you have a small company or up to 200 employees, you don't need a huge number of pages. 25 pages in policies will be enough. And maybe 70 to 100 pages of policies will be enough if your company 200 more than 200 employees. Yeah. And once you have done, So basically, the procedure is what I was calling before, yeah, the classification standard, yeah, the grid, the evaluation grid. You build a classification grid, a classification standard, suit the purpose for your organization with people responsibility of people. If you're using ISO, will be clause 4 to 8. This is the fault with responsibility of people, the maintenance on the cost, the scope, things like that. Yeah, not getting to that today. But once you have defined all that, yeah, then whenever a new application come in, as I was showing before, you have an automatic generation legal document, automatic tagging, whatever that is. Then this new application can be assessed based on your AI governance group. Yeah, as I was showing you element before, and therefore you can implement the solution. Your AI safety testing team should basically design test. But as much as possible, you should use open source test tools and framework. There are a lot of them. Not mentioning name today. It's too long. It's already almost an hour already. Wow. And basically with these free tools, and if you have a testing developer, they absolutely should be able to design and build the testing procedure for you. And the most important thing to design is when the test fails, what they should do, what your testers should do, and you have an incident response automation procedure when the test fails, or even worse when there is a breach in the situation with clients or things like that. Yeah, you design that. Yeah, and then of course there is your operation team that actually run the test, record it, do the maintenance, do the Python script, and log, record if something is being not wrong but also not as expected, or things like that. That's if you started from scratch. Yeah, take example, you have online, yes, use an LLM, don't trust the output of the LLM directly, but you can do directly on that. Now, what happens instead if you have an existing governance, which means that you could have already ISO 27001, as I said before, you can have a NIST governance in place, a procedure in place, whatever that is, yeah? What do you do with that? Do you start from a separate standalone system? How this system will interact with your already existing cybersecurity manager things, or whatever other procedure, your governance procedure you have in place already? Yeah, how would you do that? Well, again, I cannot stress enough, you should crystal clear clarify what is your risk exposure, exactly as if you were starting from scratch. And then you have two options. One option is if the business is enabled by AI, which means yes, you're using AI solution, but you're not deeply technological aspect. You're just a business aspect in your sector. It can be legal, it can be logistic, whatever that is. But you're just enabled by AI, just using AI for serving a business purpose. But you're not defined. AI is not defined. You're not a tech company, basically. You're deep tech expertise. Yeah. Then probably a integrated system will be the right option. You have already compliance for safety in safety regulation or your own company or whatever that is. You add on your own existing management system, you add few tests related to the AI solution you're already using. Yeah. Vice versa, the different case if your business is actually AI first. The all business of the company relies on the implementation of AI system. Yeah, it's not just a secondary helpful things that your company has, but it's actually the backbone, the core of all the process of the system, hence the revenue and so forth. In that case, yes, it's best to have your own AI management system, your policy, procedure, and tester, or the separate standalone, and may connect the rest. Again, as I said before, if your company up to 200 employees, 25 page policies, more than that, up to 100-page policy, it should be fine. And costly to keep your cost of operation as low as possible. Now, again, once you define that, again, I say one more time, you have defined a grid, evaluation grid. Yeah, any new AI system you are using should come to your evaluation grid, and you should decide what you want to test, what the compliance status you want for that, and things like that. Yeah, that's what you're just done here. Yeah, or here in case you have an existing governance. Now, the second aspect of it is once you've done that, automate routine and safety check. Again, you have your safety testing team. It needs to design the test, but no need. In case you have an integrated system, you can aggregate all the tests with your original tests you do for software. Any software, by the way. I'm sure you already have, if you have already governance in place, I'm sure somewhere, somehow, someone implement and maintain those tests. So therefore, they should be able to build a new test. They don't need to have AI expert. They just need testing expert, whether it's AI or any other type of software. So they can design and build other software for you. They probably are already open source tool or framework they're already using it. They can aggregate everything together, yeah, including the incident response. And then again, the running, the recording of the tests, things like that, stays the same as I was saying before. Now, saying that, we can go towards the end, giving a few rule of thumbs. Yeah. So the first rule of thumbs I will say to you is, as you can see, it should be a surprise for now. So if you want to implement AI governance, the more your solution is sophisticated, basically is using AI in a sophisticated way, in a not controllable way, the more, and you are in a regulated environment with significant high risk exposure for your business and subject to compliance, UAI Act, for example, you should employ as much as possible easier model, because a easier model by definition is, even if it's what I call logistic regression for the technical people around you. Look, the easier the better, because the simpler, the less things to test there are. Yeah, the more sophisticated the model, the more API, point of junction, point of fracture, point of vulnerability, the more things you need to test. This is a fact, and bear in mind with that, so you can minimize as much as possible the cost and enhance the return of investment. Again, for most company out there, they are in their high risk tires, again related to impact on human life, education, healthcare, pharma, whatever else. The deadline is August 2026. By August 2026, you should implement an AI governance system, unlike what I was just describing to you. I cannot stress that enough. You should check for the worst possible harm. I say more than a few times now. That's the last time I say to check for the most possible harm and design all the tests and the policy around to capture these worst possible harm. Yeah. And with that, I would like to remember you that the most critical person in the company, yeah, is the person that decides this. Yeah. Once you have a new AI system, yeah, the AI protection officer, which is the one that should decide how to evaluate the solution before getting the test and implementing everything, may have the tendency, is an incredibly important figure. They need to decide, is key to decide the return of investment or the cost of their governance. Yeah, because he may have the feeling to be as safe as possible, yeah, which basically means you want to do a lot of tests. I mean, put a lot of crosses, do as much tests as possible. However, if you do that, then you basically you're gonna spend a lot of money and possibly have a very minimal return on investment of your AI application. Vice versa, is the person, the AI protection officer, decide to do very few tests that expose you to, risk the application AI application could go wrong. It could result in harm from the company, lawsuit, etc. So the reason why I'm saying this, the AI protection officer that decide how much test to do, is such a valuable, important figure, is that it needs to find a delicate, I say again, delicate balance between testing everything and consuming a lot of money, or testing too little and yes, saving money by exposing the company to potential even further damage, lawsuit, or things like that. It's a very delicate manager. It's a very important person uh, that needs to get the balance right. Not an easy job to be, but hey, that's what he needs to do. Yeah. And then, by all means, as there are the data champions in the data governance structure, in the AI governance structure, you will have AI champions, so people that go around and know why AI solution tests should run, and kind of implement if your AI solution like chatbots I was mentioning before, and it needs to be, the auto should be checked in a certain way by the company employees. You should have people that periodically check the other people in the organization are actually following the procedure your company just decided to implement. Yeah, usually these people are not receiving much love from the company because obviously they are very tedious and to the point of what the policy are, but hey, are necessary if you decide this is a significant risk and harm for the company. You should check and make people the tedious factor checking part of uh, working life for any person in the organization, no matter what. Now, remember, as I say, for example, for the EU AI Act, you should include AI cybersecurity layer to secure the application, whatever there is. And usually that is 5 to 10% of the total cost of the operation budget. And if you have already ISO 27001, remember that you can link that the new AI governance or the ISO 42001, for those of you that want to implement it, you can link that together, have an integrated management system with that. Yeah, especially if you are not AI first. Yeah, this is a good solution for you. It's very cost efficient. Rule of thumb on cost: the total out of the total project budget, governance should cost between 4 and 8%, and maintenance cost should go to 10 to 15%. Yeah, that may or may not include part of the cost of the auditing, because the auditing there is as the most expensive part of the AI governance. If you want to be audited, it's not necessarily obligation, but it may be helpful for you if you want to do that. With that, I thank you for your time. I'm more than happy to see if there is any final question on that. Otherwise, I hope you learned something today, and we can resume with a seminar like that. Let me know if it was